This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. I don't know about you. I like growth. You like growth. And my guest, Jim Huffman, really likes growth. Welcome to The Speaking Show.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Happy to be here.
And of course, I say this because you are the CEO of marketing agency Growth Hit. Growth Hit is so violent, so angry. But sometimes growth works that way. Tell us about how you came to be the marketing guru that you are, how Growth Hit came about, and what you're up to today. We'll use that as the springboard for our chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So how Growth Hit came to be, I actually didn't even start my career in marketing. I started my career in finance. I was working at a very small investment bank working in spreadsheets. And in that path, I was at a very cool phase where people were selling their companies. We'd come in and value them. And I'd be in these meetings. And I quickly realized I was on the wrong side of the table. I didn't want to be the investment banker, the MBA, the lawyer. I wanted to be the guy next to the entrepreneur that was helping grow these businesses. So I quickly kind of left the finance world and I went to be a part of companies. And this is 2010. So it was startups. And I was lucky enough to be a part of a startup that started to really get traction. And because I was non-technical, I'm not a developer, not a designer, that put me in the marketing category. So that started with email marketing, then led to SEO. We launched an e-commerce division. And so all of a sudden it's like, hey, Jim, you're in charge of e-commerce, figure it out. And so one thing that's nice, if you can catch one of those companies that starts to grow, opportunity can really emerge from that. I was like employee 25, salt to like 150. And so all these new opportunities that emerge, they're trying to throw bodies at it. So if you could be one of those people that's up for learning, you can really pack, multiple years of experience into like 6 months. And so from that, I then went to another startup and was able to lead kind of digital marketing. And that's when I started also teaching marketing on the side. I was living in New York at the time. I was teaching at a place called General Assembly, which is continued education for professionals. And then I got connected with a few VC firms that were funding the startup I was at and working with some of their founders. So that quickly led to me starting to do one-off consulting on the side on nights and weekends. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was horrible at pricing. I just liked helping out. And then I kind of put the hours together. I was like, man, I'm spending a lot of time on this side project in addition to the company I'm working for. I should make a decision. And that's when I was able to get 2 clients to kind of commit to basically employing me full time. And I could jump ship and start this kind of consulting thing that led to an agency. So that was kind of the roundabout way to starting Growth Hit.
And when people hear marketing agency, they have one of 2 thoughts. They either like run for the hills, like, oh my God, not another one, or, oh, that sounds interesting. I wonder if they work with companies like mine. So tell us a little bit about how you specialize and focus and what your sweet spot client is, what your sweet spot projects look like.
Yeah, absolutely. We're big fans of kind of not doing everything decently, but choosing a few things and trying to do them really well. So really niching down. So we position ourselves like, hey, you have a company, ideally you're like e-commerce lead generation, you're doing a transaction online, you're looking to really scale, you need an outsourced growth team. And that's where we kind of play. It's like you could hire a head of growth, which could be fantastic. Might take you 3 to 6 months. Hopefully they work out. If not, that's 12 months of your life that were not spent in a very efficient fashion, or hire us will start in 2 weeks. And so one thing that we do, the core of our product offering is, growth experiments or conversion rate optimization, where we want to run an experiment on your site every single week to increase ROI, increase your conversion rate, and essentially pay for ourselves. So, we're your outsourced growth team. Ideally, we're doing conversion rate optimization, and we love e-commerce clients. We love lead gen. And we love some SaaS companies if they have enough volume. And the reason why we like doing CRO is because it's very black and white if we're lifting conversion, lifting sales. So you know right away if it's working or not. We also do ads and we do email with the core CRO, because I have seen that, with marketing in general, it can be very gray and like, hey, is this working? Is there ROI here? So the more we can tie it back to the business metrics clients care about, the more happier they're going to be with us and the longer the retention will be. So that's where we try and play.
Now, you also, one of the reasons that we're chatting is you sent me a very compelling story on the kind of the inside business side of what Growth Hit was up against. And Jim, what you went through personally when you lost $400,000 of annual recurring revenue. Like just at the drop of a hat, boom, poof, gone. Thank you, COVID-19. Talk about that pivotal moment. Share a little bit about that story. And then the exciting part of that story, the fun part of that story, is the rebuilding and the regrowth, sort of eating your own dog food, if you will. But talk about that huge disruption and loss and what was going through your mind sort of moment by moment. And then walk us through a little bit of that financial recovery.
Yeah, going into 2020, we're like, oh, this is going to be a banner year. Things are going fantastic. We finally hit 7 figures. We're looking to go above that. We were about to make 2 key hires. And more importantly, I was finally able to fire myself from a lot of, honestly, some junior level tasks that I had been holding on to for way too long. And anyone who's running a business knows that you need to be working on your business rather than in your business all the time. So I'm very optimistic for 2020. And as you say, COVID hits and it just has a ripple effect through our business in multiple ways. One, we're an agency. And when a business owner is looking at their income statement and, things they can cut, we are at the top of the list, especially when we're working with venture-backed companies that right away have, a lot of burn rate issues with cash. So it's March 13th, it's a Friday. We start getting these emails like, hey, Jim, Growth Hit, we've got to pause working together. We get a couple. I'm like, okay, I see that coming. We'll be fine. But then it's just rapid fire. And like you said, essentially $500,000 evaporates in 48 hours. And so in addition to that, I actually got COVID-19. Obviously, I'm fine. I didn't have any respiratory issues. It could have been significantly worse. So we're just getting hammered. It's the worst day in my professional career. Meanwhile, I'm wearing sweatpants. I can't stay awake for more than 2 hours because I'm just exhausted from this virus. And I have 2 kids under the age of 3 or 3.5. And so our daycare shuts down. So it's just it's World War III in our house. So it was quite a time for us as a lot of curveballs were being thrown our way.
So that was a bad day. Now, even before we talk about the recovery and the rebuilding, you work with venture-backed companies, you work in the startup field. Everyone talks about mindset. Everyone talks about having a bulletproof mindset, do what it takes, bust through walls, make it happen, do the impossible. All of that sounds great on paper. It sounds great in a pitch deck. When it's knocking on your front door, it's a different story. How did you keep your mindset together? What was going through your head about, oh my gosh, the world is spinning out of control. Someone stop this crazy thing. I want to get off. Did you spend a couple days in sweatpants, just head in hands going, not only is this the worst Friday of my professional career, this is now becoming the worst weekend of my professional career. Yeah. This might even lead to the worst week of your professional career that following Monday through Friday. How did you recover? How did you be resilient? What were you telling yourself? What was the self-talk in Jim's head?
Well, first, it's you're kind of in shock. Wow, you're doing the numbers. That's 2 years of work that's just out the door. So you're trying to not dwell on that too much. And honestly, I was so exhausted and sick, I couldn't even focus. Usually when you're back against the wall, you want to be able to fight and do whatever. But I'm I can't even think right now. I was so sick and out of it. But come that Monday, first, it was a game of math. We were actually lucky that we needed to make 2 hires. Our team was overextended. Because we hadn't, we definitely got hurt, but it wasn't so bad where I have to start laying people off and cutting salaries and expenses. We definitely need to be aware of that, but we had some time. So I ran the numbers and it gave me confidence okay, if we can hold on to what we have, we're still going to be okay. Where I gave ourselves 3 to 4 months to be let's go with this full team and go try and be very aggressive. So that was good, the game of numbers. The second was, I think a lot of times you as a business owner or as a business leader, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be this rainmaker and come up with the strategy, the silver bullet to get out of this. So I was what if I do the opposite and I find the smartest people I know, it's an executive coach, a mentor, and other entrepreneurs, and let me be very transparent with, hey, here's where we're at as a business. Here's some scenarios I'm thinking of how to get out of this. What's your feedback? So I quickly set up meetings with people. I gave them the agenda. I was like, hey, I just need 30 to 45 minutes. Can I pick your brain? And everyone was super responsive and got on a phone call really fast. And what was nice is I was able to stress test my ideas, see why people liked them, didn't like them. I'd get some other ideas that were fantastic that I wouldn't even take their advice on, do the opposite. But it gave me more confidence to start being decisive, which I think that's another issue is even myself, I want to be decisive, but sometimes I sit back on things. But because I wanted to try and close $500,000 in essentially the next 2 months, you had to be decisive. The other thing was we had to realize, okay, who is our new ideal client? Is it the same industries? Is it different industries? Should we change our offering or get a new offering? And so as we're going through that, we're coming up with this new, essentially go-to-market strategy. And then we also defaulted to everyone's looking for answers, but no one really has them. What if we're the ones giving those answers? So we also decided we need to create more than we consume. So we started looking at other downturns. Like obviously COVID-19 hasn't happened before, but there's been other downturns and companies have come out of those even stronger from a marketing perspective. What have they done? And so we started publishing content around the research we did there. And so just, defaulting to let's lean on smart people to stress test our idea. Let's have a bias towards action. Let's create content and let's reevaluate our ideal consumers or ideal clients. That's how we approach kind of coming up with a strategy out of this.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. I'm curious, can you either name names just from a gratitude and a thank you kind of position? Who'd you call? I'm like dying to know, who did Jim call when it was hey, can I pick your brain? Can you help me out? Was it Techstars people? Was it old buddies that are in the business? Who was it?
Well, I have an executive coach, Rick McGuire, who's fantastic because he's really good with mental models and frameworks. He loves the books like Scaling Up and Traction. And he's like, oh, yeah, he gave me a resource. It's like the 5 S's for managing in a crisis from scaling up. I called another entrepreneur whose opinion I respect. His name's Tommy Griffith at ClickMinded.
Tommy's been on the show, by the way.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah. He's a very creative thinker when it comes to problem solving. So he was a good guy to brainstorm with. And then Rob Sobers, he's essentially a CMO of a publicly traded company, Varonis. And I feel like he has more intelligence in his pinky than most people have in their entire brain. And just hearing him vet my solutions was fantastic. And then honestly, my team, like especially our senior leadership. So that was kind of the round table, the phantom board that I call it, that I was leaning on.
So now you have to basically recoup a lot of business in a 2-month period. Mm-hmm. COVID's hitting everybody. I mean, this is like the domino effect and things are closing and states are closing and everything is just horrendous. When you said we were asking ourselves, does our offer have to change? Does our messaging have to change? Does our positioning and packaging and value prop have to change? And you said it was kind of a renewed go-to-market strategy, like go-to-market 2.0, because it went to market before COVID. Now we're going to market after COVID.
Yeah.
Did you find that obviously clients, when it comes to marketing, lead generation, client acquisition, they have a whole new set of problems in April and May 2020 that they never dreamed they would have in January of 2020. How did you reposition or add a COVID-19 urgency layer to working with you so that you could be the Sherpa and the guide that navigates them out of this disaster?
What's interesting is we started looking at, how do we meet them where they are? What are their new problems? Because their entire 2020 goals have changed as well. So we wanted to talk through, is this the time to act? Is this the time to plan? How do we plant seeds for when your consumers are going to be more aggressive to buy in Q4, Q1 of next year? But the other thing that was really interesting is we started to see that while a lot of people were hurt negatively, there were businesses that were positively impacted by this and needed us more than ever, to where we didn't have to discount ourselves. Because I was like, oh, we need a discount. We need to come up with a new, cheaper offering. But it's like, actually, Like e-commerce went from overall transactions being 11% of what people buy online and offline to essentially 30%. So e-commerce, if you're an essential product as opposed to a luxury, you're having a boom. So they absolutely have the money to pay us our full retainer. Online education was going up. And obviously essential products that aren't on e-commerce that were then trying to come onto e-commerce. So we actually saw that we didn't necessarily need to change the strategy for these categories. We could do our same offering. So the existing clients that were impacted in a negative way, we absolutely worked with them to, our SOW went out the window as far as scope. We're like, let's do whatever we can to meet you where you are, come up with a new plan. And is this a branding? Is it lead gen to do a sale later down the road? But with these new clients, it was all about, hey, this is your opportunity. Now is the time to set the foundation to capitalize on this increase in demand as much as possible. So yeah, it was kind of twofold based on industries being negatively or positively impacted by COVID.
I want to also pick up on something that you said, which I think is still true today. You said it was so much fog of war, uncertainty, no one knew what was going on. So we figured, why don't we take the lead? And my conviction is still to this day, and now we're like 5-6 months into it already. Here's the secret. No one still knows what's going on. No one has any freaking idea what's going on. And we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know if it's going to get better or worse or stay the same because no one has any idea what's going on. Most people listening, most entrepreneurs, you included, you could have taken two different stances. Stance number one is hide under my desk. Who am I to say I'm an expert, right? Imposter syndrome. I don't know anything more than the next person. So why should I be putting out content? Why should I be speaking up? Or the opposite of that, which is what you did. Hey, no one knows what's going on. I might as well speak up. I might as well take a leadership position. I might as well help as many people as I can help, given my expertise, my insights, my recommendations, knowing that no one knows anything ultimately anyway. Did you wrestle with some of that? The imposter syndrome, the who's going to listen to little old Jim? We're just the company. We're an e-commerce marketing company, growth hacking company. There's a lot of growth hacking companies. What's going to make someone listen to me? Blah, 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 blah. Even though you're an excellent writer, you do a fantastic job with all of your content, very, very compelling. But we often overlook our own strengths and we assume, well, everyone else has these strengths also. How did you get over that imposter syndrome, or did you wrestle with that at all?
Oh, 100%, because it's like, how are we the authority on this all of a sudden? So one thing we wanted to do was to be like, we don't have the answers, but here's how we're going about getting them. So we did kind of a data-driven narrative where we pulled research from like Bain, Harvard Business Review, McKinsey that did studies on other downturns and what companies did to come out of that and essentially curated it. So that was the first thing is like, okay, here's how we're doing research from these qualified sources to kind of give us credibility and push that forward. The other thing that we can be thought leaders in is in our own case study of what we're doing with GrowthHead. So that's why we published what we were doing as a company to get out of this. So I think if we could go with those two avenues, that would remove someone being like, wait, why are you the thought leader? What do you have to back this? So if we had these other things to back us, then we felt a little bit more confident in spreading the story. And I think just by publishing our numbers and being vulnerable with like, hey, here's how we are hit, here's where we are now, the numbers give more color and make it more real on what we're going through. So I think you get a little bit of at least respect when you put that out there.
For sure. It reminds me of the entrepreneurial maxim about, hey, solve your own problem. And the rest of the world, there's a lot of people out there that have that same problem that will want to buy this from you. In your case, you're like, hey, I'm trying to save my company. Here's the journey that we're on to save our company. And then other companies who are trying to save their company go, these guys get it. And they're being vulnerable and they're being transparent and they're sharing their day-to-day, how they're making it happen. And then underline, they're making it happen. Maybe we should hire them.
Exactly. And the other thing too is like, it's interesting to see how people make a purchase, especially if it's like a B2B purchase, like an agency or a consultancy. One thing that I've realized is you just want to be top of mind and around. Like if you're always adding content and you're giving them something that helps them in their day-to-day, they will think of you down the road. And so usually it's not even being a thought leader, it's just showing your work. Right? It's just putting yourself out there on what you're doing. So hopefully when it comes time, they'll think of you. So that's something that I've realized because it's funny, like when I look at our attribution model for getting clients, so many times it's like, oh, we saw you all do a webinar, we saw you do this talk 12, 18 months ago, 6 months ago. It's like, it definitely can snowball and compound.
There's also two very interesting lessons embedded in what you're sharing. One, the way I talk about it is you want to zig where everyone else zags. Yeah, you see everyone else going left. Yeah, we're going to go right. And let's see what's over there. And that's number one. And then the second one, of course, is when everyone's hiding under their desk and playing defense and saying, oh my God, how can we hang on? How can we preserve what we have? You go on the offense and you're like, you know what? More ads, more leads, more funnels. Let's funnel the heck out of this thing. Let's go crazy while everyone else is pulling back and stopping ad spend and so forth. So talk about that contrarian, I guess they're really the same idea, but zig where others are zagging. And when everyone else is scared, you charge forward and you go into growth mode instead of let's protect our little, what shreds we have left of the remains here.
Yeah, no, exactly right. And the other thing, like with an agency, like when you run the numbers, we really only needed to close like 5 deals. And when you think about it, 5's not a huge number. We're not selling $20 t-shirts and need to do like 10,000 transactions, right? So it's like, okay, how can we be aggressive, especially when we see these pockets of industries that are booming right now? So we talked about creating more, increasing the content we're putting out there. The second thing was, let's actually double our ad spend where we're targeting these people. The third is, let's actually be more aggressive with our ABM strategy, account-based marketing. So what that meant for us is essentially exporting a database of who are all of the leaders, marketers, CEOs of these companies in these industries that are going well. We're running pre-ads to them 2 weeks before we do cold outreach. And the cold outreach, it's all this content we're making to add value to people, to meet them where they are. It's just giving that to them and then offering to do literally just a free audit for them, because cold outreach is super annoying. It's easy to hate on it. I hate on it. So when we do it, it's like, we don't even sell. It's like, hey, here's this free content. We'd love to do an audit for you. We've qualified you. We think we could add value. Let us know if you want to talk or not. And so those things combined were able to get us, essentially in 45 days back to the business that we lost. But trust me, it could have been very easy to be like, let's just weather the storm, sit under the desk, try and keep our clients happy, save our pennies. But I don't know. I think you'd rather go down trying to be strategic and aggressive rather than just sitting on your heels.
Man, oh man, this is so much gold here. I want to talk about the audit, because this is the major problem with cold outreach, cold email, cold LinkedIn. Here's what most people do. You don't do it, but most people listening do it, and you people need to stop it. It's like, hi, Jim, would love to connect with you on LinkedIn and blah, 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 blah. Okay, poor Jim. You're enough of a sap where you go, okay, David, sure. And I immediately cram some webinar or some PDF or some piece of crappy content and go, you want to book a call with us?
Yeah.
It's like, no, in fact, I never want to see you again. Instead, you're doing this relationship-based, highly targeted, highly curated outreach, and you're offering them an audit. Now, let's talk about this audit piece. Because a lot of times people go, oh, it's an audit. And a lot of executives are like, well, it's a veiled sales pitch. Don't say yes. Don't say yes. It's a trap. It's a trap. So what do you do to preempt that response that lowers their shields and invites you in? And then what kind of audit is it? And how do you frame the value prop of the audit? Knowing that, of course, you're a marketing agency, people listening might be a sales trainer or a leadership consultant or a strategy coach, but we all have some flavor of an audit that we could do. Walk us through how yours works and how do you lower that barrier where they're not afraid it's going to be a sales pitch in disguise?
For sure. Yeah. And I think running those pre-ads 2 weeks out, the whole goal is for them to see growth hit and that we're adding value. And the ads are not sales ads. We're just putting out free content in the ads. So they're like, oh, wow, how should a head of growth manage during COVID?
So you made a custom Facebook audience out of your ideal client personas, uploaded that and showed them ads 2 weeks before an outreach.
Exactly. We got a list using a few different lead sources, upload that to Facebook as like a custom audience, and then just trying to get in their feed that, hey, we exist and here's some free stuff we put out there. We then do the cold outreach. And by the way, the cold outreach, I think the email is under 40 words because no one wants to read email either. And it just gets right to the point. And so the audit for us is essentially, it's a CRO audit where we're like, we'll map their funnel and do a heuristic analysis, and we'll come up with anywhere from like 7 to 10 recommendations that like, hey, if we're your growth team, if we can do growth experiments, do CRO on your website, here are the first 7 to 10 things we would do. And then we also build an ROI model. And it's actually more for us than them, where we're like, okay, can we even get you an ROI with, running experiments? Because we've actually done it a few times. And then after the fact, we did the ROI model and we said, hey, you shouldn't hire us because we're not going to be able to pay for ourselves. Other times it looks like gold because we're like, okay, we can pay for ourselves and still get you like this really strong ROI if we just get 30% of our experiments to be fruitful. And I think we come to it from a numerical perspective where we let the numbers drive like, hey, if this will work or not. And usually when we do the CRO audit, the CEOs or the VPs of marketing, they're looking at it like, yes, I've been wanting to test that. Yes, we'd love to test that. So a lot of times we're on the same page and it's a fun collaborative effort. But I will say our COO doesn't necessarily love these because they are time intensive a little bit. And it requires us getting on the call to walk them through them, which is why we're always trying to qualify them first. Because honestly, it does take time from us. But if we close the deal, it totally is worth the effort.
Do you find that if you call at a high enough level and the value prop is totally spot on to what they want, do people sign up for these audits who are kind of tire kickers or who are not serious about buying? Or what's the filtering mechanism so that you don't waste all that time that you just mentioned?
Yeah, for us, it's do they have a round of funding over a B round so we know they have capital to invest in this? The second would be how much
you do online research to find that out, or that's part of your intake?
We would do online research to do that because we can get that on Crunchbase or other places. Also, how much traffic they have tells us if we can actually run experiments, and number of traffic does give you a level of some sophistication. A lot of times you can get that with the Alexa ranking using a tool like SimilarWeb, SEMrush, or SpyFu, or you can just ask them how much traffic they have.
Right.
But that's usually our
Cool.
filtering mechanisms to know if they're potential clients for us.
And then I'm just channeling our listeners, Jim, because everyone's loving this strategy. What is at the end of the audit, at the end of that initial download where you've kind of given them the 7 to 10 recommendations, what is the pivot or what is the ask or how do you invite them to become a client? What's the language or what's the framing around that language?
Yeah, I think I'm a horrible salesperson because I'll just be like, hey, so we do this stuff. Here's like kind of our rate. Here's our project plan, where we find it's helpful when because our COO is quite good at like setting up a custom program and running it week by week. So we're like, here's how an exact 12-week program would look, running an experiment per week. And it's like, if you'd like to work with us, here's how it is. But by the way, it's like, this could be now or this could be in 12 months. So we try and just lay it out. But as far as the language I would use, it's like, hey, let us know if you'd like a custom project plan on what that looks like. And then we could take it from there. And a lot of times they are curious and want to know. And it's good for them to have that in their back pocket if they want a growth team now or down the road.
What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. I'm going to share a little contrarian experience with you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just unique to me. I don't know. When you say I'm a terrible salesperson and you're just very, not to me, but when you genuinely feel that, which I'm picking up that you're genuinely feeling that.
Yeah.
People feel much more comfortable with someone that they genuinely feel, see, hear, is not striving to come through the computer screen, put their hand in their wallet, get the credit card. I've had situations where I'm the customer, right? I'm buying on this end of the equation. And I will call up a company or a sales team member who I had not talked to before. And I don't know if it's my voice. I don't know if it's because I have a big personality, but they're like asking me, dude, yeah, we don't take cold calls. And I'm like, no, I'm a prospect. I'm a customer. I want to give you money.
Yeah.
They think I'm some cold calling salesperson. And it's like, no, I've got the credit card on this end of the equation. So there is definitely something to be said about not coming across too slick, not coming across too loud, not coming across too big, and just let the buyer buy. Back off, I love what you said, Jim, about the qualification process, the filter. You do very specific targeting. You're not inviting every Tom, Dick, Harry, and Jane to one of these audits. And you're super selective in that what I call client recruiting. Mm-hmm. It's really, we're filling a job. The job title is your next client. And so you're in recruiting mode, you're selecting them. And then the outreach, you're not assuming the sale. You're coming in humble, smart, data-driven. Man, there's like 100 lessons in there, not just for me, but for everybody listening, that we got to stop trying so hard and striving so hard. Client selection, let's talk about that for a minute. I was talking to another guest, I guess this was a week or two ago. He said the most important skill, he's a consulting guy, the most important skill that I've ever developed, and I only realized this recently, he said, is client selection. Period. End of sentence. You fix that, all the other problems go away. Pricing, retention, customer satisfaction, referrals, everything goes away. On a subjective, objective, intellectual, and emotional basis, how can you get better at that? Or how have you gotten better at client selection?
Oh man, I could not agree more. It's something that unfortunately I feel like so many people have to learn the hard way. You have to go through these really bad experiences, but it literally is everything. Because I'm sure people especially anyone in the client services, you can look at the number of clients you have and look at where your pain comes from. And it could be like the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, where it's 20% are creating a lot of stress and headaches and nightmares. And so we're getting better and better at that, especially as we mature. Because early on, I think you're like, I'll take anything. I want to make sure this goes well, and you want to overserve. But now it's like qualifying is so important, because what's awesome about qualifying, once you start checking these boxes and once someone fits into it, you're like, wow, this is our sweet spot. We don't have to sell because we can just show our numbers, show the data, and know that we deliver and give value. And it's so funny because as you start to increase your prices and really niche down and have a key skill, the clients that pay the most actually end up being the best. They aren't as high maintenance. They get it. And it's not like some startup clients that are maybe at a seed round where they want you to be a miracle worker and they're slacking you or emailing you every hour on the hour. And not just falling in love with what a price could be and what you could get out of it, but what is the day-to-day? Does this fall into your sweet spot where you're going to hit a home run and they're going to be a good client? I wish I knew exactly how to identify those from the start. I think it does start with that filtering mechanism, but then it's a little bit of even in the sales process, how were they with negotiation and feedback? Those are big tells early on.
For sure. Absolutely. And, I think we all have to learn it in our own way, but my recommendation is that folks learn it sooner rather than later. Do not wait until late in your career to figure all of this out. Now, Jim, you also have a great book out there. Tell us about the Growth Marketer's Playbook and how you came to authorship. And was that an easy process, fun process, or the worst thing ever in your whole life, or somewhere in between?
Right. Yeah, somewhere in between for sure. Especially when I did the audiobook under my table with pillows around me, but maybe I shouldn't let that secret out. So I was, like I said, I was teaching at General Assembly. I was doing some very small talks at Techstars and other kind of venture capital firms, but I ended up having something like 500 slides worth of content on growth marketing. And I'd been teaching this, so I was able to see with people I was teaching what really resonated, what didn't, the questions they had. I was like, I should really do something with this content so it doesn't just die on my hard drive. And so I decided to repurpose all of it into a book. It was fun for me because I was so familiar with it, but it's how do you package it up from slides into a book? And so, I was able to put it out there. But the funny thing with launching a book when you're a marketer, it's like, oh, I should probably be good at marketing this book. If not, it doesn't have a chance. So that was kind of a fun challenge to try and market it and to get it to number one on Amazon without a publisher or anything. I kind of did a direct to consumer approach with the launch of it. So I'm proud to say it was a bestseller on Amazon for a whopping 72 hours. We beat Seth Godin, and then he skyrocketed past us after he turned on his marketing machine. But yeah, it was a fun kind of exercise.
Very nice. And tell us a little bit. A lot of authors come on the show and they say the great thing about the book is it made me think in a more structured way about my services or about what I believe or about what I teach or about what clients really, really want. Now, you already had the 500 slides, you already had the teaching experience. Was there an extra layer of aha when you put it into book format, or was that already there?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I'm a huge fan of frameworks, and I will say all my slides were all over the place because they're on various topics. So it definitely made me be like, how do I put this into a narrative that if someone's launching a business today and they wanted to get into growth marketing, what would be the path I'd take them on, the order of operations, and what tools would you give them? And what's nice is I took a lot of that and kind of put it into our agency as far as like the templates and the frameworks that we use. So it definitely made me get more organized, which it's unfortunate it took like a 150-page book to do that, but it was a worthwhile exercise.
Right. Wow. Very exciting. Now, tell us a little bit, because I know we talk about, you use the word growth a lot. Growth, obviously, growth marketing and growth hit. Is there a difference in your mind between kind of traditional marketing, lowercase m, versus growth marketing, growth hacking, growth experiments? Because these are not marketing experiments. They're not sales experiments necessarily. They're growth experiments. In your mind, kind of what's the vocabulary difference there? How should people think differently about growth marketing?
Yeah, I think with traditional like advertising and marketing, you could even go back to be like, those are top of funnel tactics. Anything from like the Mad Men style of marketing where you're awesome at branding, come up with cool campaigns and copy, you hit publish, put it out there and watch the money pile up. And I think as you go into the digital age, growth marketing, you could say it's top of funnel, but it's full funnel from, middle funnel, bottom of the funnel. You're talking retention, remarketing, referrals, understanding that full journey. And your metrics for success might not be impressions or awareness, but it could be profit, sales, and whatnot. And so what we like is we want to do things that touch the entire funnel, getting to not just like, the top of funnel ad strategy, but what are those barriers to purchase? How do we remove those with on-site experiments? And the people do convert, how do we get them to convert with more frequency? Or how do we get them to recommend the product to their friend? Because once you can like optimize every phase of the funnel or the growth loop, whatever we want to call it, you look really impressive as a growth team or as a business team. So that's what we like to play, is to really be a part of the full funnel.
I love it. Well, two final questions here as we start to wrap up. The final question, because this was so amazing, so awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The final question is going to be, how do people get connected and stay connected to more Jim Huffman brilliance? But before we get to that, if folks were to take one central idea from growth marketing and all of the great things we talked about today, what would you hope that one central takeaway idea might be?
I think it's honestly take a bias towards action and experiments. I think so many times we want to like do research. We spend a lot of time doing what we think is important work, but it's, you're not going to get ROI from a Google spreadsheet or a Google Doc. It's like have a bias towards action, be okay with failing, putting experiments out there. Because if you look back, in 4, 8, 12 weeks, how many things did I try and what did I actually learn? If that is your metric for success, then I think you're on the right path. That's something that we do, is like, what are we actually getting done? What are we putting out there each week, each month, each quarter? Because the more you're testing, the more you're learning and iterating on it, the better you'll be in the long run.
Love it. Absolutely fantastic. Well, Jim, how do people get connected and stay connected to you and Growth Hit and the book? And where can we send them? Where can we link them up? Right under this episode at thespeakingshow.com. What links can we share?
For sure. Yeah. So my agency is just growthhit.com. My email is jim@growthhit.com. I'm around and available. The book is thegrowthmarkersplaybook.com. I think there's a nice promo code on there for people. And then I also like put blog content out there on my own blog, jimwhuffman.com. That's a lot of URLs I'm throwing at people, but that's where I talked about, losing $500,000 in 48 hours if people want to read content like that. So yeah.
Right. So we're gonna link up all of that. Jim's personal blog, the company, the book website, all of those goodies right under this episode at thespeakingshow.com. Well, Jim, thank you. This was tremendously insightful. We have to have you back. I think there's more juice we can squeeze out of that lemony brain of yours.
I'd love to. No, and I love the content you're putting out there. Keep it up. It's fun for me. I love podcasts. I'm a sponge for this stuff. So thanks for having me on.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.